let's go over the kitchen worksheet. And you've already downloaded, you've already maybe reviewed it on the section before, but this is going to be a key form for you to remember all of those little nuances in a kitchen. Now, hopefully the clients already come with some really good ideas of what they want through the website. Maybe they've picked the package. However, you are going to run into people that haven't really and need some help. And so this is going to prompt you on how to, what to remember. You also want to bring this on the site visit to kind of go over what to look for to make sure some of this stuff is going to work. So I'm going to go briefly over this. We are going to expand on some of this stuff, on some of the differences of the finishes, but let's go over this so you kind of know why it's on the sheet and why it's important. So let's just dive right into this. I'm going to try to make this somewhat quick. Some of it is self-explanatory, but let's go right in. So let's just start off with the top here. Very simple. We price everything by linear feet. So you want to measure the linear feet of the existing cabinets, and maybe if they're saying, hey, we want to add more along this wall, we want to add an island, you're going to add that to the total. Why do we need to get that total? So we can get that price in there. Sometimes add a little bit just in case. Obviously, a space can only fit so many cabinets, so you can kind of know there's a top end of the budget. I like to get that. Now, a typical kitchen, a 10 by 10, which is a small kitchen, is 35 linear feet. So if you are between 25 and 60 linear feet, you're doing it correctly. If you're way off, then if you're outside of those, you either have an enormous kitchen or a very, very small kitchen. So standard kitchen is about 35 to 40 linear feet. Same thing with countertops. It is actually very similar because it is the lower cabinets times 2 because the width of the cabinet is 2 feet. So, you measure your lower cabinets and you times it by 2, you'll get your countertop square footage. Remember, when you are doing an island, it is going to be 2 feet plus a 1 foot overhang if they're looking to put stools. It is a typical 12 inches is plenty for an overhang for it to be kind of that bar sit at island. We can go further, but then you need supports. Room square footage is obviously really important for the flooring and the paint, and it obviously gives us an idea of the total project, and we can kind of calculate some square footage stuff. Backsplash, that backsplash, you want to make sure you measure for that. Now, that's going to be pretty easy if you have your linear foot of your lowers. You can also do, you can calculate that. But sometimes we're going to do backsplash up around a window or maybe do an accent wall. So really figure out, making sure that that's accurate. Cabinet style and color is really going to be worked with the designer, but this will give you an idea to make sure that if they are looking for an inset door, you'll learn about that. Obviously, that puts them right at tier 3. If they're going for a white shaker, we know we can get those anywhere, and they can be in the tier 1, tier 2. So you want to know that. The color, obviously, if they're going to go for some weird color that's not white or gray, maybe they're jumping into the blue, which is starting to get popular. We know it's going to be on a higher tier. So we want to know that. Crown molding, yes or no. And do the cabinets go to the ceiling with that finish look? Very important. Obviously, that's getting the cost. You want to be able to get their budget where that's accurate. So these are the questions. Countertops, laminate, granite, and quartz. There's a whole other video of the differences of those, but those are obviously difference in cost. Laminate is really that entry level. Granite and quartz is more of the workhorse and what we use a lot. And then, if they're looking for something unique in granite or quartz, you're going to be in that tier 3. Appliances. Do we really need to get involved with appliances for them? No, not at all, but we need to know what they're going to pick. We try to stay outside. A lot of people are going to those and buying appliances on sale, and we'll stay outside of that because it is the last thing that comes into the kitchen. However, we need to know the widths. A lot of people are going to upgrade that stove from the 30-inch to maybe the 36, more of a gourmet. They're also going to maybe upgrade from electric to gas, which is better for cooking. So you want to really ask those questions. The same thing with the fridge. The counter depth fridges that are much, the width, it fits within the counter, it doesn't stick out so far, typically go from that 32 or 30-inch to a 36-inch. Why do we need to know this? When the designer starts to design these kitchens, that is going to determine where a lot of things, how it lays out. So we need to know the widths. We are, like, as you see right here, you need to collect the PDFs of the appliances picked and then get them over to the designer. Again, with the range hood, a lot of times another upgrade is if maybe it's not vented. How do you know a range hood is vented? If there's a cabinet above it, open up that cabinet and look for some sort of a venting. If there's nothing in that cabinet above the hood, then it's just recirculating. That is an upgrade, and I think it's a good thing to push because it will move a lot of air and keep the kitchen cleaner. Now again, that range hood is going to be the same size as the stove or stove top or range. And so if you're upgrading from a 30 to a 36-inch, the range hood needs to be the same. So something to think about. Wine fridges, we see that this is an add-on. Again, people are going to be remodeling their kitchen and they want to update and upgrade their experience, so that wine fridge is, a nice add-on. Remember, you have to run a new separate line to that. So for electrical. Sinks, you want to make sure what do they want for a sink. This is kind of important on the design, but also when you're putting in their allowances for their tiers. So a drop-in is that simple drop-in sink. It's the budget friendly. It goes with laminate counters. We don't do a lot of those, but sometimes it fits within the budget. Undermount is going to be a lot. Most kitchens have undermount. It's kind of in the middle. You are using, it has to be with a solid surface countertop. So your granite, your quartz, your corians, which we don't use as much. Apron sink is what everybody wants right now. So the cabinet is different and the apron sinks are a bit more expensive. So you're going to be in that tier 2, tier 3. If you can get a faucet, model and make, it gives you an idea. Hey, I saw one, it was $300. You can put it in for the tier. Now, garbage disposal, again, same thing with the wine fridge and the vented range hood. Some people don't have it, and they can get excited about it. If there's no garbage disposal existing, you have to bring in a new electrical line, just like the wine fridge. So if there's no existing garbage disposal, then if you're going to add it, you need to add electrical also. So really important. The biggest thing is take some really good photos of underneath that sink so production can see and, can make sure that all that's up to code. Because sometimes all of that stuff from the plumbing to the electrical underneath that sink isn't up to code, because the dishwasher has to be plugged in where you can actually, there has to be a plug. Sometimes some old ones are going to be hardwired, so we're going to want to look for some of that stuff underneath. Backsplash, again, you're talking about it so you get that into their allowance. Is it tile? Have they, what type of tile? Is it a glass tile? Is it just a standard subway tile, which it's $4 or $5 a square foot? No problem, put them into tier 1 or tier 2. Or is it natural stone? Or is it like they want some marble one piece and then you want to get some pricing before you even put them in a tier? So you want to ask those questions. You don't need to know exactly what tile yet. You just need to be able to put them into a tier. And and if it's kind of like, they just don't have any idea and they're really overwhelmed, you might want to push them in to say, listen, let's get you sit down with a designer if they're thinking of doing more of a, let's take all this wall down and I just want to know what it's going to all look like, it might be the time. But you're still going to need to get all this information because we need to price it out and then let the designer, help with the exact where the drawer pullouts are and all that stuff. So electrical is a big part of the kitchen. A lot of older kitchens are not going to be wired properly. So if the house was built before 1970, there's a very good chances we're going to have to, and we're doing a full remodel, we're going to have to add some electrical to it. So of course we like to push our recessed lighting because the recessed lighting really make a big difference. The same thing with under cabinet lighting, and it's about $1,500 to $2,000 for recessed lighting. 10 recessed lights are usually what work in a kitchen, and then under cabinet lights, they come in various lengths and they'll go based off of what cabinets are in the design. So you can kind of get an idea. About $2,000 again, we'll put if they're not existing in. So you can talk to them. We recommend to push those because it really makes the kitchen. Pendant lighting, obviously if you're adding a island, you're going to have pendant lights, so you're going to want to add that. Now, this total circuits again, 5 total circuits for a kitchen. That is if the house was built 1950s and below, and that it hasn't really been remodeled. Why do we need 5 new circuits? Well, code says each appliance has to have their own circuit. You have to have your own circuit for your lighting, and you have to have your own circuit for your GFIs. So, again, really good photos. You're going to go down into the basement and get some good photos of the electrical panel. We'll be able to production will be able to look for that and see. We can send it over to the electrician. But you want to get some good photos of the panel to make sure if we have to add those 5 spaces or maybe only 3, that there's space at the bottom for new breakers. If we don't have room for new breakers, then we have to put a sub panel or we have to upgrade the whole service. So we need to make sure you have that picture of the electrical panel. You'll know right away and say, you can kind of prompt the client to say, listen, you don't have enough space. We're going to need, if it has 100 amps, we're going to need to upgrade it to 200. We'll have more training on that, but you need to be aware of it. Electrical appliance hookups. Now, there is a bit of on a dishwasher and even a stove, they do not come with they call them the whips or the actual plug-ins attached. So sometimes the electrician needs to wire those in and plug them in. So if we are going to be hooking the appliances up, we need to know. We try to really push the client, if they're buying the appliances outside of our trade partner, that they have that company install. We don't want to have anything to do with them. Moving plumbing. Now this is kind of, it's obviously somewhat common sense. If we move plumbing, there's plumbing costs, but we want to get, again, like I was saying before, we want to get some photos of underneath the sink, because even if we're not moving it, sometimes there's old valves are corroded and the plumbing isn't plumbed right. Or if it's apron sink and you have, the plumbing's coming out of the wall, that apron sink sits much lower, so we might have to replumb that area. So you want to get a good photo of there to see. If it's old galvanized piping, cast iron, it could be lead even piping if it's old enough. We want to get to know, and you also, if you can, access underneath that kitchen, if the basement's open, a nice photo, boom, of what we're looking at for piping. And you can even see then if it's already leaking, and then we know we really have to replace it. So those photos are going to be critical. Of course, if you're moving your sink to the island, or you're moving it down the wall, or you're moving it somewhere, it's a few $1,000s for the plumber to reroute all of that plumbing. So again, you can push them if they're within a budget. Try to keep the sink. Now, of course, the sink is the greatest. A lot of times you're not going to move that sink because it's in front of the only window in the room, and that's really the best place. Again, access beneath, you want those photos. And existing plumbing, what is it? Is it PVC, copy, cast iron, copper? We need to know that because it is just to cost a little bit. Again, a lot of those upgrades are, I want a gas range because it's better for cooking. You got to make sure, is there gas at the house? And if not, then we have to switch over to propane and get a propane tank outside and reroute it in. So, and then finally in this section is the heating. Heating is really important. Heating is calculated to heat that room properly. So if it's a big old cast iron heater and it's, one of those old school, it gives off a lot of heat. And if we were to remove that and put baseboard, the baseboard ends up being way longer because he needs to put out so many BTUs. So one of the solutions is a toe kick heater, and you can do your own research on that. We might add that into the section a little bit more, but it's going to go underneath the sink. It's going to hook up to the baseboard hot water system, and it's going to have electric fan, and it's going to blow the heat out of that. We usually do right underneath the sink, and that will heat the kitchen if we are removing, and putting some cabinets where an old baseboard or the old radiator was. So some solutions, but it's definitely, it's not cheap. So we need to make sure we have really good accountability of what's going on there. Existing flooring, you want to look, get a photo maybe of a doorway to see, is there like a couple layers, because there's like a little bit of a lip, a step up, a threshold, and what do they want? If the flooring is doing some weird stuff, like it's really, dipped, you're going to want to push them away from anything that's like a big tile. You really want to get that into that luxury vinyl that has the ability to kind of conform to that floor, because obviously there's a bit of cost for us to really flatten something out. Painting, you're always pushing painting. People will say, "Oh, I'll paint to save the fort $2,000 or $3,000." It is not worth it. We are a turnkey company, and when the painting isn't done and it's not done properly, and the homeowner goes in there and it just never looks professional, and it makes the whole job bad. So you really want to push that out. Again, you're going to measure up the walls if you're doing, so we get the square footage of all of that stuff. Window replacement above that sink, if you're, if it's an old window, you don't want to not do it, because what happens is the whole kitchen looks awesome, and then you've got that one window and it looks garbage. Obviously you're going to want to look at the rest of the windows in the house. If they're all need to be replaced, then you're going to want to say, hey, this might not be part of your project, but you want to plan. So we put a new window in your kitchen that's going to be what you want for the rest of the house, if it's vinyl, wood, or fiberglass. But really push that. For the window, it is going to be a crank out. You don't want a double hung window above a kitchen sink, just for the simple reasons this is very difficult to lean over for some people and push the window up. It's much easier to kind of crank it out. So that's kind of the window thing. And if you think we're missing something on this, let us know. We'll try to add this, because this is really helpful. I've done a lot of kitchens, and it's always helpful for me, because when you're on that site visit and you're like, am I forgetting something? Or the customer's asking a bunch of questions, and there's a dog yapping, and the kids throwing stuff. It's distracting. So you need to be able to have something. Okay, I got photos of this, I got photos of that, I've asked this question, etc., etc. The rest of these things are, you might want to do a quick sketch of the kitchen, so that you make sure you have all of your measurements, your square footages, and then you can kind of draw in what the proposed is, with notes and that kind of stuff. It's a quick pricing guide. Now, obviously, these pricing is changing. There's probably this 15 to 25 is a little bit low right now. Our average kitchen's in that 40,000 range. It's hard to get anything done for 15 at this point, but This is a great guide just to kind of rip off, hand over to the client, and say, you know, based off of where you are, you're probably going to be 50 to 60,000. I'm going to fill all this in, you know, but it's, you know, you want to set that expectation, because if they thought it was 10 and you're up in the 50 range, you know, this is just not, it's not going to go well, and everybody's wasting their time. Again, obviously we're working on our, you know, on our funnel so that we can kind of get maybe, you know, people more through the website, and they'll have already learned all this stuff. But, you know, you're going to find people that haven't, and you really have to educate them. So that's the kitchen worksheet. You know, use it. You're going to really want to, you know, dive into each one of these so you do understand what you're asking for when they say, well, what's recessed lighting, or what's pendant lighting, and, you know, etc. All right, on to the next one.